So, two eclipses, a great apparition of Mercury, Mars passing through an open cluster, and all of the naked eye planets being visible make May and June of 2021 a very action packed pair of months. So, welcome to Observing with Webb, where a high school astronomy teacher tells you what you're looking at, why it's so cool, and what you should check out later this month at night. This is a big one. I'm combining 2 months just to make sure I get all the information out. And but if you just want to fast forward to the stuff that you want to see, there will be some text over there in orange as you go through the video, so you can fast forward on YouTube to see exactly what you're looking for. Let's get started.
Mercury, Saturn.
All right, well, let's get started with the sunset planets throughout these 2 months. All right, so if we go over and look in the west around sunset, let's say around 8 p.m. Let's go a little bit later just because it doesn't get dark till a little bit later. Let's say 8:30 if we're lucky. The big one that you're going to see is Mars, but we're going to have Mercury and Venus pop in, and let's see how that happens. But Mars, basically you're just looking west after sunset, and you're just finding that non-twinkling orange reddish dot, and it's right at one of the feet of Gemini down here at the beginning of the month. And what's going to happen is Mars is going to move up through Gemini in May and up through Cancer in June. Oops. So let me go back to about 8:30, and what you'll notice, you'll see Mercury down here. Now, Mercury is actually going to make a really good apparition this month, okay? And Mercury right there, it's much higher than it usually is during an apparition, but it is pretty much visible all the month of May, but the middle, right around May 14th and 15th, is probably your best shot. In fact, if I go a little bit darker, let's say 9 p.m., it's still above the horizon, which is really good. Now, this is when it's highest in the sky. Also, right there, there is a very thin crescent moon right next to it on May 13th. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But May 13th is a good night to get out because you have that guidepost of the moon. So anyway, what then goes on, Mars is going through Gemini in May. And oh, there we go. We've got Venus joining the party in the evening. So you've got Mars, Mercury, and then Venus. And Venus is another good guidepost because it's super duper bright. And so for Venus, this is going to be its evening star appearance for the year, I believe. And it's going to be very bright, but it's not going to get very high in the sky. In fact, as we go through, Mercury's gone by the end of May. Can't really see it, but Venus is taking its place. And as we go through June, you notice that by June 21st, the summer solstice, Venus is pretty much as high as it's going to be, but it doesn't get much higher than that, only about 10 degrees. In fact, if we go even further into the future, notice it just kind of hangs out there pretty low on the horizon. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, so we've got, remember, Mars, Venus, and Mercury. Remember, Mercury is in May, and Venus is more in June. Throughout the night, we don't really see too much. However, Jupiter and Saturn are starting to make their appearances. Now, let me go back to May 3rd. That's the day I'm recording this. And let me go to sunrise. And what you will see is, Jupiter and Saturn are actually pretty high up there by about 5 a.m. And in fact, on May 3rd, the moon's right nearby. We'll talk more about that later. But Saturn and Jupiter, you've got the two gas giants that we can see with our naked eye in the southeast around sunrise. And they get higher and they rise earlier each and every day. In fact, I'm at about 5 a.m. as I go through the month. You'll notice that, same time, they're higher and a little bit further toward the south. It gets a little brighter because the sun rises later each day. Okay, and actually by the end of June, they're off in the south, And let's go to June 30th. And what you'll see is, wow, they're already in the south, and they will have risen, let's see, just past midnight. Just past midnight in June. So next month in July, I guess I'll put them in the throughout the night category. But there you go, Jupiter and Saturn. Remember that Jupiter is 15 to 20 degrees to the left of Saturn. Jupiter is going to be the brighter one. And yeah, that's what we got for planets. So gas planets in the morning and terrestrial planets at night.
And a bunch of other stuff. And a bunch of other stuff. And a bunch of other stuff.
So for the events, let's start off with where the moon is going to be and what it's going to look like. And both May and June, just like every other month, they all look very similar to each other because the moon is almost on a monthly cycle. Although our months are more 30 and 31 days as opposed to the 27 and a half day cycle of the moon. But anyway, May starts off with a waning gibbous moon. That means that it is mostly lit up and is rising later at night. Now the official last quarter moon is on the 3rd. That's when it's visible from midnight and into the morning. Then from May 3rd to the 11th, you've got the morning crescent. You wake up in the morning, see a nice crescent moon in the east. Then you've got the new moon on the 11th. After that, it becomes an evening crescent from about the 11th to the 19th. The 19th is the first quarter moon where the right half is lit up, and you can see it from the evening until about midnight. And then after that, you've got another round of evening gibbuses. Okay? And the same thing goes for June, except for June, the last quarter moon is on the 2nd. Then you got the morning crescents until the 10th, which is the new moon. The evening crescents will be after that, and the first quarter moon is the 18th, evening gibbous, and then a full moon on the 24th. All right, so let's get into actual things that are happening starting even today, May 3rd to the 5th. We've got the moon, Jupiter, and Saturn. So in order to see this, you got to get out there around around sunrise, or after 3:30 in the morning, between 3:30 and about 6 a.m. These 3 mornings, it's actually going to be pretty great. Let me move to a more reasonable hour of 5 a.m. You see the moon over here with right next to Saturn. On the following day, you've got the moon basically in between and below Jupiter and Saturn. And then on the 5th, the moon is below Jupiter and Saturn. Now, the cool thing with it being summer and the ecliptic being low is that the moon is actually going to be visible the next, for the 6th and the 7th probably as well, if you have a nice clear view of the horizon. So, all right. Next one, we've got May 12th to the 16th. Now, that's another lunar close encounter, but now it's going to be toward the sunset. So let me move to sunset, 8:10, and let me look to the west. And oh, there we go. Oh, nice. We've got Venus and the moon here. Now, honestly, I think this is going to be a big challenge to see because even though Venus is super bright, it is low on the horizon. And that means that it's going to be somewhat bright when it's there, and the moon is very, 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 very thin, but it'll be there. So if you have a nice view of the northwestern horizon, that would definitely be something to see. Now, on the 12th, it's right next to Venus, okay, and only about 1 degree away. Now, on the 13th, it's a slightly thicker moon, and it's going to be to the left of Mercury. Mercury should be much brighter than anything around it. Should be fairly easy to find, but binoculars will certainly help. And let's see, 14th, the moon is right in between Mercury and Mars, meaning that you've got a nice lineup, Venus, Mercury, Moon, Mars. And then the next night, the moon is right below Mars. So you can get a good series of pictures or observations of this happening. And lastly, on the 16th, you still have a nice big lineup of those planets and the moon. So go ahead, take a look and check that out. Make sure you get out after sunset and have a nice view of that horizon. The better your view of the horizon, the more you'll be able to see Venus and Mercury. All right, so now the total lunar eclipse. Missed it by that much over here on the East Coast. Okay, if we go to May 26th, now what's really happening is, let's say the sun's over here, the Earth is over here, and the moon's over here. The moon is going into the Earth's shadow. Okay, and during a total solar eclipse, it goes into the darkest part of that shadow, and it turns a really dark brown or red or orange because of all the sunsets and sunrises on Earth being filtered through the Earth and to the moon. And one of the reasons we're not going to be able to see anything over here on the East Coast is because, well, the Earth's shadow is just barely going to start covering up the moon right as the sun rises. So we're kind of out of luck. Okay, now, not every one of you who watches this is on the East Coast, so let me take a quick look at this little map here. This is timeanddate.com. They do a pretty good job. And so what's happening is it's just starting its partial eclipse as it's setting in our sky. So, yeah, it's not good for us. You might be able to catch a little bit of the moon being eclipsed by the Earth's shadow on the East Coast, but the further west you are, the better you'll be. In fact, over here, like West Coast California, you'll be able to see, let's find out. Oh yeah, you'll be able to, oh wait, that was just the penumbra. Oh wait, we're not even going to get the penumbra, which is the weaker portion. It's going to be daytime, so East Coast, no. West Coast, you might be able to pick up a little bit of darkness there, and it doesn't look like you're even going to really be able to see totality. So, hey, if you want to make sure that you see this, go somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, easy enough, or go to Eastern Australia, New Zealand, well, if they'll let you in there. And yeah, so it's going to happen, but we're not really going to be able to see it. I wouldn't be surprised if NASA has something going on as far as like a live view of it. So make sure you go out and take a look. All right, back to the moon encountering the planets. We've got a May 30th to June 3rd close encounter between the moon, Jupiter, and Saturn again. And we've got after 2 a.m., but before sunrise, just go out and look southeast, southeast, and look for the moon. And what you'll see is Jupiter and Saturn right nearby, again, about 2 fist widths away from each other. And on the 30th, you've got the moon off to the right of Saturn. On the 31st, again, the moon is in between Jupiter and Saturn, but a little bit below. And then the following night, June 1st, or following morning, June 1st, you've got the moon right below Jupiter, and then it moves off to the left. Now, like I said, with the ecliptic being low, the moon actually is still able to be seen for quite a bit with Jupiter and Saturn nearby. But basically, the best is May 30th to June 3rd. All right, so let's talk about that June 10th annular solar eclipse. So what you're going to see is going to change dramatically based on your location. I'll get to that in a second. But before I do that, what's going on here? Well, the moon orbits the Earth, and every now and then it's perfectly lined up with the sun. And so that's what you see here. The moon is right in between the sun and the Earth, and so it casts a shadow. But see, this time the moon is actually shifted a little bit further away from the Earth, and when things are further away from us, they look smaller, which you can easily just see with my thumb covering up that, and then as it gets back, it gets smaller. Same sort of idea. Now, since the moon is further away, it looks smaller in the sky than what we're used to, by a little bit. We can't really tell but we can measure it. So what's going to happen is, instead of the whole thing being covered up and getting this beautiful corona like you do for a total eclipse, what's going to happen is you're going to get the annular solar eclipse. Let me show you what that looks like. Where what happens is the moon does eclipse the sun, but it does not cover the entire surface of the sun. And so what you get is this ring, an annulus, or a ring of the sun's surface, if you are in that area called the antumbra, which is the spot directly below the umbra, or the dark inner portion of the shadow. So, yeah, so that's kind of what you'll see. Now, it depends on where you are, like I said, because what's happening, if we look at this little globe here, is the shadows being cast on the top part of the Earth. So the shadow is being cast up here, and so really only in this red band will you be able to see the actual annulus, and to either side you can see a partial eclipse of the sun. So that leaves us on the East Coast. Well, it depends. You kind of want to be in the northeast as opposed to the southeast. So the best viewing is, well, America doesn't get much, but if you're up here in the northeast, you've got pretty good viewing. If you're down in the southeast, sorry, but it's not going to happen, because it's going to happen as the sun is rising. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, so for those of us here in Lancaster County, it's going to look something more like this. It'll be a sunrise eclipse. So take a look. I'm at June 10th at about 5:42, and as I move forward, technically it rises, I believe, right around 5:34, but you can see I have some mountains in the way. But if you have a nice clear view of the horizon, it'll be even better. But take a look. As it rises in the morning, it will be a crescent sun, which is not something you see every day. So essentially, we're going to be able to see the partial parts of the eclipse. We're not going to be able to see the totality, but we will see the partiality of this eclipse. And then for an hour or so, it's going to rise up, and the moon moves to the left, and more of the sun becomes exposed, right? So again, here in Lancaster County, sunrise is 5:34. So at 5:34 is the absolute latest you want to get out. But you want to make sure you have a nice clear view of the horizon. Look over some stretching farmlands. Don't look toward a mountain if you can help it. And make sure that you bring your eye protection, and that's not just sunglasses, right? I have a link in the show notes for that sort of thing. But, you know, same type of thing as usual with welder's glasses. There's a specific number. You can get eclipse glasses. You can actually project it onto something. There's all different ways, and I'll let you look that up. But basically, over the next hour, the sun rises up about 15 degrees, and the moon shifts to the left and uncovers more until about 6:30. Here we go. Which is last contact. Which, actually, I think this is going to be really, really cool. We basically get a partial solar eclipse at sunrise. So go find a really good location to watch this, and I guarantee it's going to be amazing. I wouldn't bring binoculars or a telescope unless you have the proper solar filters. If you have the proper solar filters, by all means bring them, but make sure that you have those filters and you don't, go blind. So that right there is the annular solar eclipse. On June 12th to the 14th, we have another close encounter with the moon, Venus, and Mars. Okay. In fact, on the 11th, you could argue that, the moon is close to Venus, but that's going to be a tough one to see. But on the 12th, the moon is right in between Venus and Mars. And then on the 13th, the moon will be about 3 degrees above Mars. And then on the 14th, you got a nice trail of treats there: the moon, Mars, and Venus. The 20th is the summer solstice. Nothing really to look at, but it does mean that we have the shortest night of the year on that day. Which for us in Lancaster is about, I think, 15 and a half hours of daylight, and only whatever that is, forgive me for not preparing that. Then you got the 22nd. Okay. Now on the 22nd, what goes on? You want to wait a little bit later, maybe about 9:30 when it's dark, and you want to find Mars, and Mars will be in a star cluster, and that cluster is M44, the Beehive cluster. Now you can ignore these stars from the model, and if you look closely, you can see the actual picture there. But Mars will be very, very bright and basically in that cluster, really more off to the side on the 22nd. On the 23rd, Mars is going to be pretty much right in the middle. And then on the 24th, Mars will be off to the left. So on the 22nd, it's over here on the right. 23rd, it's in the middle, and 24th, it's over there. So just really cool. It's going to be much, much brighter, but it's going to be neat to see it within a whole bunch of stars. Now, one of the cool things about this is that you're looking at two things, and one is significantly closer to us than the other. Mars is within light minutes of us, whereas those stars are 500 light years away. But they're in our Milky Way galaxy, but they're still 500 light years away. Yeah. So I think that's just pretty cool, even though it would take us like 9 months to get to Mars, something like that. All right. So let's take a last look at one last thing for the month. And if you were thinking, oh, I bet you it'll be some sort of close encounter, well, you are correct. And what we got to do is go to, oh, there it is, June 26th to the 30th. We've got a great lineup with the Moon, Saturn, and Jupiter. In fact, let me go a little bit later, even into the morning. Zoom out a bit. Here we go. Now they're becoming more throughout the night planets. But on June 26th, you see the Moon, and then Saturn and Jupiter. Then what happens is on the 27th, you've got the Moon underneath Saturn. 28th, it's kind of in between. 29th, it's down to the left of Jupiter. And then June 30th, it's off to the left. All right. And, you know, you can still sort of track that even into the next month. They sort of move apart. All right. So those are the events for May and June. And last but not least, let's talk about some constellations. And we'll divide it up between after dinner and before bed and before work. So let's say you go out around 10:30 at night. You'll be looking at the Big Dipper, Booties, Virgo, Corona Borealis, and Hercules. And that's what we're seeing up here. Typically what I do is I say basically look, well, pretty much northwest. And if you look pretty much northwest, almost straight up above you, you'll find the Big Dipper right here. Okay. But now if you turn to the left a little bit, you'll be able to see some of these guys. And what you do is you take that handle of the Big Dipper and you follow that arc to Arcturus, which is the brightest star in Boötes, the shepherd. And then you speed on to Spica, down here in Virgo, Spica being the brightest star there. These two have actually been very, very bright at night. Definitely worth a good look. Let's see what else we got. We have Virgo right there. Booties. Oh, Corona Borealis. This is one of my favorites right here. A little C shape or cup to the left of Booties, Boötes. And then you've got the Keystone asterism, which is the central part of Hercules right here. And if you want a little extra challenge, you can look for the M13 Hercules cluster in here. But then let's say you go out before work, taking the trash out. Let's see, about 4:30 in the morning. There we go. We've got our summer triangle, Cygnus, Aquila, and Lyra over here, with Delphinus to the left right here, the little dolphin. Just wonderful to see the summer is coming. You've got the brightest star in the summer sky, Vega, right there in Lyra. You've got Cygnus the swan and Aquila the eagle. Just, it's gorgeous. It's good to see them. You might even be able to see them earlier if you know where Hercules is. But that's that's where we're going. Okay. So with that, don't forget that on the 20th is when you've got that annular solar eclipse, which you might be able to see. If you can't see that, you might be able to find the May 26th total lunar eclipse. And so June 10th, annular eclipse, May 26th, total lunar eclipse, and then a whole bunch of close encounters in there. So I'm really hoping we all get some very clear dark skies. And here I am wishing you very clear dark skies for the month of May and June.